The battlefield was silent now, but it was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of smoke rising from broken machines, of the ground still warm from fire, of bodies lying still beneath the dark sky. A cold wind moved through the ruins, carrying the faint smell of burning metal. Above, the stars shone bright, distant and uncaring, as if the universe itself did not notice the war happening below. Sergeant Daniel Hale, a human soldier, walked carefully through the wreckage. His boots crunched against broken stone. His rifle was still in his hands, ready, though he did not expect to find enemies alive here. He was searching for survivors, maybe comrades, maybe civilians, but in the ruins of this alien village, he had found only shadows and silence. Then he heard it, a soft, broken sound, like someone crying. Daniel froze and listened. Came again, higher this time, a child's sob. His heart tightened. Slowly, carefully, he followed the sound. His steps were quiet, his eyes scanning for danger. Behind a fallen wall, he found them. A small alien child sat on the ground, clutching the hand of a woman lying beside him. The woman was older, though still young by human measure. Her skin was pale blue, faintly glowing under the starlight. Strange markings ran along her arms and face, symbols of her people. Her clothes were torn, her body weak and wounded, but her chest rose and fell. She was alive. The child looked up at Daniel, tears streaking down his face. His eyes were wide, golden in color, shining like the stars above. Fear and hope lived together in that gaze. Daniel lowered his rifle. Slowly, he raised a hand to show he meant no harm. "It's all right," he said softly. "I won't hurt you." The child shook his head, his small voice trembling as he spoke broken words of human tongue. Please help my mother." Daniel knelt down, keeping his movements calm. He saw the woman's wounds, burn marks, bleeding cuts. She needed medical care fast. He reached for the small medkit on his belt. But then, the child said something that froze Daniel where he was. The boy clutched at his mother's hand tighter and looked directly at the human soldier. His words came in a desperate cry, heavy with fear and innocence. "Please, marry my mother. She's all I have left." For a moment, Daniel thought he had misheard. His hands stopped. His mind raced. Of all things he expected to hear, it was not this. The boy's voice cracked again. "Please, don't let her die. Don't let us be alone. You marry her. You save her, please." Daniel's breath caught in his chest. He looked at the boy, then at the woman lying weak and silent. Her eyes opened just slightly. She looked at him, eyes deep and full of pain, but also dignity. She did not speak, but her gaze seemed to ask the same question. "Will you save us?" The wind blew through the ruins again, carrying the faint whistle of emptiness. In that moment, Daniel felt the weight of choice pressing down on him. This was more than a battlefield rescue. This was something strange, something he could not yet understand. The child crawled closer, grabbing Daniel's arm with both hands. His small fingers trembled. "Please, she is my only family. If she goes, I have no one. Human. Please, make her yours, make us safe." Daniel had faced gunfire, explosions, enemies charging with blades and claws. But he had never faced words like these. A child's plea, a desperate heart. He swallowed hard, his soldier's mind fighting against the storm of feelings inside. This was not the time for promises, he told himself. He had to focus on survival. The enemy could still be near. The woman could die without treatment. And yet, deep inside, he knew this was more than survival. It was a test of his humanity. He set down his rifle and pulled the medkit open. His voice was steady but gentle. "I will help her. I will not let you be alone. I promise." The boy's eyes widened, tears still falling, but a spark of hope lit within them. He nodded, clutching his mother's hand again. Daniel worked quickly, cleaning the wounds, pressing patches to stop the bleeding. The alien skin reacted strangely, glowing faintly where human medicine touched it. The woman groaned softly but did not wake fully. The boy whispered to her in his own language, Words Daniel could not understand but could feel. Words of love, of pleading, of hope. Above them, the stars burned cold and distant, watching this strange scene. A human soldier, an alien mother, and a child whose innocent plea carried the weight of two worlds. And though Daniel did not know it yet, that single plea, "Please marry my mother," was the first step into a story that would change the future of both species. The night was long, and the ruins felt colder with each passing hour. Daniel sat near the alien woman, his rifle resting close at hand. The child had cried himself to sleep, curled up against his mother's side, one small hand gripping her torn clothing. Daniel watched them both in silence. He had seen many strange things in this war, but nothing had unsettled him like the child's plea. "Please marry my mother." The words echoed again in his mind. He tried to shake them away, telling himself it was only the desperate cry of a frightened child. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized the weight behind it. That boy wasn't only asking for safety. He was asking for something permanent, something that meant belonging. Daniel looked at the woman again. Her breathing was shallow but steady now. The bandages he had placed were holding, and the bleeding had slowed. He could see the alien glow of her skin where the patches touched her wounds. Strange, beautiful, and fragile all at once. She was not human, yet the pain written on her body was something he understood too well. For a moment her eyelids fluttered. Then they opened. Daniel froze. Her golden eyes locked onto his. They were not the wide, innocent eyes of her child. These were the eyes of a mother. Tired, watchful, suspicious, yet holding a hidden strength. He had seen eyes like those before, in human refugees, in mothers clutching their children during evacuations. Eyes that said, "I will protect my child, even if it costs me my life." He expected her to push him away, to call him an enemy. But she did not. Her gaze lingered, studying him. She did not speak, perhaps too weak, or perhaps unwilling to use his tongue. But her silence was louder than words. Daniel cleared his throat. "You're safe now," he said quietly. "I'm not going to hurt you." Her eyes narrowed slightly, as if testing the truth of his words. Then, slowly, her hand moved, weak but deliberate. She touched her child's head, brushing her fingers over his hair. The boy stirred but did not wake. A soft expression filled her face, and then she looked back at Daniel. In that look, Daniel understood what she was asking. Not with words, but with her eyes. She wanted to know if he could be trusted, if he could protect the boy when she could not. Daniel let out a slow breath. "I'll get you both out of here," he promised. The woman blinked, almost like a nod. Her eyes softened for the first time. For a moment, Daniel thought he saw something else there too. Gratitude and maybe even relief. But the moment did not last. A distant noise carried through the ruins. A low rumble, followed by the metallic clatter of armored boots. Enemy patrols. Daniel cursed under his breath. He grabbed his rifle and scanned the shadows. The aliens who had attacked this village were still searching. If they found survivors, they would not show mercy. He looked back at the woman and child. Moving them would be risky, but staying here would mean certain death. He touched her shoulder gently. "We have to go," he whispered. "Do you understand?" Her eyes flickered with fear, but she nodded weakly. Daniel lifted the boy first. He was light, smaller than a human child of the same age. The boy stirred, half asleep, and wrapped his arms around Daniel's neck without protest. Then Daniel leaned down and carefully pulled the woman up. She winced, her face tightening in pain, but she did not cry out. She held her son's hand even as Daniel supported her weight. They moved slowly through the ruins, keeping to the shadows. The sound of boots grew louder. Daniel's heart pounded. He had carried wounded comrades before, but never an alien woman whose life now seemed tied to his promise. At one point, the woman stumbled. Daniel caught her, his arm firm around her waist. For just a second, her head rested against his shoulder, her golden eyes lifting to meet his. In that instant, he saw it again, her strength, her fear, her unspoken plea. Her eyes told him more than her words ever could. Daniel tightened his grip and whispered, "I've got you." They ducked behind a broken wall as a patrol passed by. Harsh alien voices echoed in the night, searching, hunting. The boy clutched his mother tighter, his small body trembling. Daniel held them both still, every muscle frozen until the soldiers moved on. When silence returned, Daniel let out the breath he had been holding. He glanced at the woman again. Her eyes were on him, still calm now, as if she had given him her trust. It was strange. Hours ago they had been enemies. Now, in the darkness of a ruined village, he was carrying her life in his hands, and her child was clinging to him as if he were family. The words came back again, haunting him. "Please marry my mother." Daniel shook his head as they moved deeper into the night. He told himself he was only protecting them, that this was temporary, that once they reached safety, his duty would be done. But deep inside he knew something had already begun to change, and it all started with her eyes. The ruins seemed endless in the dark. Every street looked the same: burned houses, fallen towers, shadows dancing under the starlight. Daniel carried the boy on his back while helping the mother walk, her arm draped weakly over his shoulder. Each step felt heavy, but he refused to slow down. Somewhere in the distance, the sound of armored boots echoed again. The enemy was still searching. The child's breath was warm against Daniel's neck. He was quiet now, though his small hands gripped tightly, as if afraid the human might vanish if he let go. The mother walked silently, her body trembling with pain, but she did not complain. Her golden eyes watched every corner, alert even in her weakness. Daniel whispered, "Stay close to me. Don't make a sound." The woman nodded faintly. They moved through a broken street, the moonlight glinting off shards of glass. Suddenly, a harsh beam of light swept across the ground ahead. "Patrol." Daniel froze, pulling both of them into the shadow of a collapsed wall. He pressed a finger to his lips, signaling silence. The boy buried his face against Daniel's shoulder. The mother's hand tightened on her son's arm. The beam of light drew closer. Daniel could hear the clicking sound of alien weapons, the guttural growls of their language. He held his breath. The soldiers passed within a few feet, their shadows stretching across the broken stones. Daniel could smell the metallic scent of their armor, hear the thump of their boots. For a moment, one soldier paused and turned his head toward their hiding place. Daniel gripped his rifle, ready to fight if discovered. But then the soldier moved on. Only when the patrol's footsteps faded did Daniel let out a slow breath. The boy shifted on his back, whispering something soft in his alien tongue. The woman gave her son a faint nod and glanced at Daniel with silent thanks. "We can't stay in the open," Daniel murmured. "We need shelter." He led them through a maze of broken walls until they reached what had once been a storage hall. Its roof was gone, but the walls still stood high enough to hide them. Inside, the air was damp and cold, but at least it was safe for the moment. Daniel lowered the boy to the ground. The child immediately went to his mother, holding her hand. She sat down slowly against the wall, exhaustion clear in her movements. Her eyes closed for a moment, her chest rising and falling as if every breath was a battle. Daniel crouched in front of her. "You can't walk much longer," he said softly. "We'll rest here until the patrols move farther away." She opened her eyes and met his. There was no anger there now, only trust. She gave the smallest nod, as if agreeing with his decision. The boy looked at Daniel then, his golden eyes shining in the dim light. "Safe?" he asked, his human words broken but clear. Daniel managed a small smile. "For now, safe." The boy leaned against his mother's side, but his gaze never left Daniel. That trust was heavy, heavier than any weapon Daniel had ever carried. Hours passed in silence. Daniel stayed awake, his rifle in hand, his eyes scanning the broken entrance for danger. The mother dozed lightly, and the boy drifted into sleep again. But the quiet did not last. A sudden crash outside made Daniel tense. Voices followed, angry, guttural, closer than before. They were searching the buildings. Daniel's heart raced. If they stayed, they would be discovered. but moving would mean risking the open streets again. The woman stirred, her eyes opening sharply. She had heard it too. She looked at Daniel, fear flashing across her face. Daniel whispered, "We have to go. Now." She nodded weakly, pulling herself up with his help. He lifted the boy again, who woke with a start but clung tightly without a word. They slipped out through a gap in the back wall, moving into the ruins once more. The voices grew louder behind them. A beam of light swept across the hall they had just left. The soldiers were close, too close. Daniel quickened his pace, guiding them through narrow alleys. The ground was uneven, rubble crunching beneath their feet. Every sound felt like thunder in the silence. At one point, the woman stumbled badly. She nearly fell, but Daniel caught her in time. She looked at him, pain in her eyes, and shook her head as if to say, "Leave me behind." But Daniel only tightened his grip. "Not a chance," he whispered firmly. "We're all getting out of here. Together." For a moment, their eyes locked, and something passed between them. An unspoken bond of trust and respect. They reached the edge of the ruins, where the ground dropped into a dry riverbed. Daniel crouched low, scanning the area. It was quiet here, at least for now. He guided them down into the riverbed, helping the woman climb carefully. The boy clung to him with silent determination. Finally, when they were hidden by the tall walls of the riverbed, Daniel allowed himself to breathe again. The mother sank to the ground, exhausted, but alive. The boy nestled close to her, though his eyes still searched for Daniel in the darkness, as if afraid he might vanish. The stars stretched above them, cold and bright. The night was not over, and danger was still everywhere. But for the first time, Daniel felt they had truly escaped, for now. The child whispered softly, almost like a prayer, "Family, safe." Daniel stared at the boy, the words striking deep. He looked at the woman, who met his gaze with tired but steady eyes. In that silence, Daniel realized something. This was no longer just an escape. This was the beginning of something far greater. The riverbed carried them farther from the ruins, its stone walls hiding them from patrol lights above. The night was still dangerous, but for the moment they had space to breathe. Daniel led the way, carrying the boy once more while helping the woman step carefully across the uneven ground. Her body trembled with every movement, but she did not let go of her son's hand. Hours passed before they found what they needed, a broken tunnel entrance carved into the riverbed wall. The door was half collapsed, the metal rusted, but the shadows within promised safety. Daniel checked it first, sweeping his rifle through the dark corners. Rats scattered, dust stirred, but no enemy waited inside. "This will do," he whispered. The woman leaned against the wall, her body shaking with exhaustion. Daniel set the boy down, then helped her lower herself gently to the ground. She winced as she sat, clutching her side where the bandages glowed faintly. Daniel pulled off his pack and began arranging the space. He spread a thin blanket on the cold floor, placed a small lantern in the corner, and checked the medkit again. His movements were practiced, efficient, but deep inside he felt a strange weight. This wasn't just about survival anymore. Every small action he took, lighting a lantern, laying out a blanket, felt like building a home, even if it was only for one night. The boy crawled close to his mother, then looked at Daniel with hopeful eyes. "Safe now?" he asked in his small, broken voice. Daniel gave a tired smile. "Yes, for now we're safe." The boy's face brightened. He turned to his mother, speaking quickly in his alien tongue. She touched his hair gently, her lips curving in a faint smile despite her pain. Then her gaze shifted to Daniel. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the silence spoke louder than any words. Daniel cleared his throat and pulled the medkit closer. "Let me check your wounds again." She did not resist. Slowly, carefully, he peeled back the bandages. The burns were healing strangely, the edges glowing faint blue where the medicine had touched. Daniel studied them, fascinated. Human supplies should not have worked on alien biology, but somehow they were. This shouldn't be working," he muttered. "But it is." The woman's golden eyes watched him as he cleaned and rewrapped the wounds. When his fingers brushed her skin by accident, she flinched at first, then stilled, allowing him to continue. The boy crawled closer, eyes wide. "You fix, Mama?" Daniel nodded. "I'm trying." The boy's voice grew stronger, more certain. "Then you family." Daniel froze. The words struck harder than he expected. He looked at the child, then at the woman. She was watching him too, her expression unreadable, though her eyes carried something soft beneath the pain. He swallowed hard. "I'm just doing my duty." But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't true. When he finished tending to her wounds, he sat back against the opposite wall. For a while, silence filled the tunnel. The boy curled against his mother, slowly drifting to sleep. The woman rested her head against the wall, her breathing steady but shallow. Daniel kept watch, his rifle across his lap, though his eyes often strayed back to the pair before him. They looked fragile in the lantern light. The boy's hand gripped his mother's clothing even in sleep, as if afraid she would vanish. The woman's face, though tired, held a quiet strength that stirred something in Daniel he could not name. He thought of the child's plea again. "Please marry my mother." At first it had felt absurd. But now, sitting here watching them, Daniel understood the deeper meaning. The boy didn't care about words or traditions. He only wanted safety, someone to protect his mother, someone to stay. Daniel sighed softly. His life as a soldier had never allowed for such things. He had lost comrades, friends, even family to this war. He had promised himself never to carry more attachments. Yet here he was, watching over two lives as if they were his own blood. A faint sound broke the silence. Daniel looked up and saw the woman's eyes open again. She was staring at him. "What is it?" he asked quietly. She did not answer in words. Instead, she shifted slightly, placing her son's small hand into Daniel's larger one. Her touch lingered for a second, then she leaned back against the wall, closing her eyes once more. Daniel sat frozen, the boy's tiny hand resting in his. His heart beat faster. He didn't know what it meant, not fully, but he knew it was trust, a gesture of faith. He tightened his grip gently, looking at the woman in the dim light. "I'll keep my promise," he whispered. The tunnel was silent again, but the weight of his words hung heavy in the air. Outside, the wind howled through the broken city, carrying the voices of searching patrols. But inside this small, ruined shelter, something different was growing. Not just survival, not just duty, it was kindness. And in the middle of war, that kindness was more powerful than any weapon. The night dragged on, heavy and long, but Daniel never allowed himself to sleep. His back pressed against the cold wall of the tunnel, rifle across his lap. He kept his ears sharp for every sound outside. The alien mother and her child rested close together on the other side, the lantern's faint glow casting soft shadows across their faces. For a moment, in that quiet, they almost looked like any family in any corner of the galaxy. But war never allowed such peace for long. At dawn, a strange sound broke the silence. Distant voices, low, guttural, carried on the wind. Daniel stiffened. He turned off the lantern and gestured for silence. The boy stirred, frightened, but the mother touched her son's shoulder and whispered something soothing in their tongue. Her golden eyes moved to Daniel, sharp and alert. He crept to the tunnel entrance and peeked out. A patrol had returned to the ruins. Their armor caught the morning light, their weapons glinting. But this time Daniel saw something different. These weren't ordinary soldiers. Their cloaks bore markings, symbols of authority. Leaders. And they were talking. Daniel couldn't understand their language fully, but the mother could. He turned to her, saw the way her eyes narrowed, her breath catching. Fear rippled through her expression. She understood what they were saying. "What is it?" Daniel whispered. She hesitated, as if the words themselves were poison. Then, in a voice hoarse and low, she spoke in broken human speech. "They know. They search for me." Daniel's chest tightened. "They know you survived?" She nodded weakly. "They call me traitor." Say, human, protect me. Say, my child, unclean. Her words struck like a blade. Daniel looked at the boy, still clutching his mother's hand. His golden eyes wide with fear, though he didn't understand the human words. For the first time, Daniel saw not just the cruelty of war, but its cruelty toward innocence. The enemy was not only hunting them, they wanted to erase them. The whispers of hatred carried outside the tunnel like venom. Daniel's hands tightened on his rifle. But the danger didn't come only from the aliens. By midday, Daniel caught another sound, voices speaking his own language. Human voices, soldiers of his side. At first, relief rushed through him. But then he heard their words. Command says one of the alien women survived the raid, one soldier muttered. Apparently, she's being hidden. Can you believe that? One of them, kept alive. Another voice spat. If she's with us, she's a spy. Better to end her before she stabs us in the back. Daniel's blood went cold. His fellow soldiers were close, yet their intent was clear. If they found the mother and child, they would not protect them. He backed into the tunnel, his jaw tight. The woman's eyes were on him again, reading his face. You're kind too, she whispered. Daniel hesitated, then nodded grimly. Some of them, yes. The boy clung tighter to his mother, sensing the danger even if he couldn't follow every word. Now they were trapped, hunted by both sides. Aliens who saw the woman as a traitor, humans who saw her as a spy. Neither would spare her life, and the child's fate would be even worse. Daniel's mind raced. He had fought countless battles, but this was different. He wasn't standing between soldiers and soldiers. He was standing between cruelty and innocence. The mother's voice broke his thoughts. Soft, trembling, but fierce beneath the weakness. If danger come, take him. Leave me. Daniel stared at her. Her golden eyes blazed with the strength of a mother's sacrifice. But he shook his head. No, I gave you my word. I protect both of you. For the first time, she did not argue. Her gaze softened. She lowered her eyes, a faint shimmer in them like tears. That night, the whispers grew louder. Both enemy patrols and human squads scouted the ruins. Twice, Daniel had to move them deeper into the tunnel system to avoid discovery. The boy never complained, though his small body trembled with exhaustion. The mother limped, her strength fading, but she never let go of her son's hand. As they paused in the darkness, Daniel overheard more of the soldiers talk from outside. If the alien's alive, she'll bring danger to us all. Her child, they say it's cursed. Half-blood, maybe worse. They must not survive. The words burned in Daniel's chest. They were not whispers anymore, they were sentences of death. The boy pressed against him suddenly, his small voice shaking. You promise. Daniel looked down at him, seeing the fear in those golden eyes. He remembered the first plea under the stars, the words that had begun this strange journey. Please marry my mother. She's all I have left. Daniel's voice was steady, though his heart pounded. I promise. No one will take you. No one will take her. You're safe with me. The mother met his eyes in the dark. For a long moment, she said nothing, but her gaze told him everything. Trust, fear, and something more, something like hope. Outside, the whispers of enemies and allies alike grew louder. But inside that broken tunnel, a different vow was made. Daniel was no longer just a soldier. He was their shield. The stars outside the window stretched like silver rivers, endless and bright. The small ship hummed softly as it carried its 3 passengers through the void. The child was asleep again, his face peaceful, his tiny chest rising and falling with steady breaths. The grandmother sat beside him, her hand resting protectively on his shoulder. She lifted her eyes and found the human watching them quietly from the pilot's chair. His expression was calm, but there was something else in it, something deeper than simple concern. It was not pity. It was not duty. It was something warmer. The grandmother lowered her gaze quickly. She was not used to being looked at with respect. Her whole life, especially in the war years, people had looked at her with judgment or disgust. And now, this human looked at her as if she still mattered. When the silence grew heavy, she spoke. You should not waste your kindness on us. We are broken things. Old, weak, and unwanted. The man shook his head firmly. You are not broken. You are alive. That is enough. Her lips trembled. His words were simple, but they cut through her doubt like a blade. For so long, she had believed her survival was shame, but he called it worth. The child stirred, rubbing his eyes. He sat up, blinking at the human. Are we safe now? The man turned his head, his voice strong but gentle. Yes, while I am here, no harm will touch you. The boy's eyes lit, and he leaned closer to his grandmother. See, Grandma? He's like a shield. He'll protect us. The old woman's chest ached. Her grandchild's trust came so easily, but for her, trust was like lifting a mountain. She wanted to believe, but fear still clawed at her heart. Hours passed. The man gave them more food, small pieces to make their strength return. The child laughed as he ate, crumbs on his lips. The sound of his laughter filled the ship with life, a sound the grandmother thought she would never hear again. She found herself watching the man, not with suspicion this time, but with quiet curiosity. He moved with discipline like a soldier. His eyes often drifted to the stars, filled with thought. Sometimes she caught a shadow of sadness there, as if he carried burdens of his own. When the child finally fell back asleep, the grandmother spoke again. You treat us as if we are family. But why? We are not your people. The man's hands tightened slightly on the controls. His voice was low. Because once I was alone too. I lost everyone. My family. My home. I know the silence of hunger. I know the emptiness of losing everything. And I swore, if I ever saw another soul fall to that darkness, I would not turn away. The grandmother's eyes widened. She had wondered what kind of man he was. Now she understood. His kindness was not empty. It was forged in the same fire of loss that she carried. Her voice shook. You lost your family too? He nodded once, his eyes never leaving the stars. Yes, but unlike you, I had no one left to protect. That is why you are stronger than me. You carried your grandson through the fire. That makes you more powerful than you believe. Tears filled her eyes. She had spent so long calling herself weak, worthless. Yet this human, who had survived battles, who carried scars unseen, called her powerful. For the first time, she allowed herself to smile faintly. Perhaps I am not as broken as I thought. The man looked at her, his voice steady. You are not broken. You are unbroken. That is different. Her chest warmed at his words. Something new began to bloom between them. Not just gratitude, not just survival. It was a bond, made not of blood, but of shared pain, shared endurance, and shared hope. The child murmured in his sleep, turning closer to her. She stroked his hair gently, whispering, We are safe now, little one. Then, slowly, she lifted her gaze to the human. If I accept your help, if I trust you, will you promise one thing? What promise? He asked. Promise me that no matter what comes, you will not abandon him. Even if I fall, even if I cannot walk any farther. Protect him. The man's eyes hardened, filled with unshakable resolve. I give you my word. While I breathe, no harm will come to him. The grandmother's heart eased at last. Her soul, weary from years of mistrust, allowed a thread of faith to take root. The stars outside glimmered brighter, as if listening to their vow. The ship continued on, but inside its walls, something greater was built. A new bond. Not of trade, not of survival alone, but of trust, affection, and the fragile beginning of family. The ship glided through the endless dark, its engines a low hum. Hours passed, then a day, and still the stars stretched without end. For the child, each moment was a discovery. He pointed at every glowing light outside, asking, Is that a new world? Can we go there? His voice was filled with a hope that had been buried for so long. The grandmother watched him with quiet wonder. She had feared she would never see him smile again. Yet here he was, alive, laughing, dreaming. It was more than she had dared to imagine. The human sat at the controls, his eyes scanning the screen. His movements were careful, precise. Though he answered the child's questions with patience, his gaze carried caution. Space was not safe. Raiders, warlords, and scavengers often prowled these routes. He would not let his guard fall. The grandmother sensed his unease. "We are not safe yet, are we?" she asked softly. He shook his head. "No, but you are safer than before. That is enough for now." Her heart ached at his words. For years, safety had been only a dream. Now, even a little safety felt like a miracle. That night, while the child slept, the grandmother sat across from the human. The ship's lights cast soft shadows on their tired faces. For a long time, she was silent, then finally spoke. "I do not know how to thank you. You gave us food, warmth, and hope. You gave my grandson a future. And me," her voice broke, "you gave me back my dignity." The man looked at her, his voice steady. "You never lost it. Others tried to take it from you, but they failed. You carried your grandson through a storm that would have destroyed anyone else. That is dignity." Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of release. For the first time in many years, she felt something deep in her soul peace. As they spoke, a sudden alarm lit the console. The man's expression hardened. He pressed a switch, scanning the radar. "What is it?" the grandmother asked quickly, her chest tightening with fear. "Raiders," he said simply. "They've locked onto us." Her heart froze. She clutched her grandchild closer as he stirred in his sleep. "What will they do?" "They will try to board. Take everything. Kill if they must." His voice was calm but sharp. The grandmother's body trembled. She had thought the nightmare was behind them, but danger had found them again. She whispered, "We cannot fight them." The man stood, his eyes hard as steel. "I can." He moved swiftly, checking weapons, preparing defenses. The ship rattled as the raiders closed in. The child woke, frightened by the sound. "Grandma, what's happening?" She pulled him close, whispering, "Do not fear. He will protect us." Her words were shaky, but in her heart, she believed them. The raiders hailed them, their voices cruel and mocking through the comms. "Surrender your ship, human. Give us the old one and the boy. Maybe we'll let you live." The grandmother's blood turned to ice. She remembered the market, the same cruel hunger in other voices. She gripped the child tighter. The man's reply was calm, cold, and filled with fire. "You will touch none of them. Not while I live." He cut the comm and shifted the ship into evasive maneuvers. The raiders fired, streaks of light tearing past. The old ship shook under the pressure, but the human's hands were steady. His movements were sharp, skilled, the reflexes of someone who had faced death many times before. The grandmother watched in awe. He was not just a traveler. He was a warrior who had chosen compassion over violence, but when forced, he could be steel. Minutes felt like hours as the chase raged. Finally, with one sharp maneuver, he turned the ship's nose and fired. A burst of light tore across the darkness, striking the raider craft. Smoke flared, and the enemy ship drifted, crippled. Silence followed. The child gasped. The grandmother's heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. The man sat back, his chest rising and falling with controlled breaths. "It's over. For now." The child clapped his hands in pure relief. "I knew you'd save us." The grandmother's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were tears of pride. She looked at the human, her voice soft. "You risked your life for us." He turned to her, his eyes steady. "That is what family does." Her lips trembled. Family. It had been so long since anyone had used that word for her. And yet, in that moment, she realized it was true. They were no longer strangers, no longer a hungry grandmother and a helpless child saved by a passing man. They were something more, bound not by blood, but by choice, by compassion, by love. As the ship drifted into safe space, the grandmother held her grandson close. For the first time in years, she felt the weight of despair lift from her shoulders. The child whispered sleepily, Grandma, are we really safe now? She kissed his forehead, her eyes shining. Yes, little one, we are safe. Because we are not alone anymore. The man looked at them, his heart heavy yet full. He had lost his own family long ago, but now, perhaps fate had given him a new one. The stars outside glimmered brighter, as if celebrating their bond. The grandmother closed her eyes, whispering a silent prayer. She had sold everything she had to keep her grandson alive. But in the end, it was not trade that saved them. It was affection. Beyond survival, there was something stronger. Something worth living for. Hope. The tunnel was quiet again, but it was not the silence of peace. It was the silence after battle, heavy and sharp, with the smell of smoke still hanging in the air. Bodies lay where they had fallen, and the echoes of violence still clung to the stone walls. Daniel stood in the center, his rifle lowered now, his chest heaving with every breath. His arm burned from the cut he had taken, but he barely noticed the pain. His eyes stayed on the mother and child. They were alive. That was all that mattered. The boy clung to his mother, whispering in his alien tongue, his voice trembling but filled with relief. The woman sat against the wall, her body weak but her golden eyes steady. She did not look at the fallen soldiers, human or alien. She only looked at Daniel. For a long moment no one spoke. The surviving patrols had withdrawn, unwilling to face him again. The tunnel was theirs alone now. Finally, the boy broke the silence. He stood, wobbling on small legs, and walked to Daniel. His hands reached out, clutching the soldier's sleeve. His voice came in broken human words. You stay. You family. You promise. Daniel knelt slowly, meeting the boy's eyes. He remembered the first night, under the stars, when this child had pleaded with him, "Please marry my mother. She's all I have left." He had not understood then, not fully. But now, looking into those golden eyes, he did. The boy was not asking for tradition, not asking for ceremony. He was asking for belonging, for safety, for someone who would not leave. Daniel placed a hand gently on the boy's shoulder. "I stay," he said firmly. "I keep my promise." The boy's face lit with hope. He turned and ran back to his mother, speaking quickly in his own tongue. She listened, then lifted her gaze to Daniel. Her eyes, always sharp, always watchful, softened. Slowly, painfully, she pushed herself to her feet. She took a shaky step forward, then another until she stood before him. For the first time, she spoke in human words, her voice quiet but clear. "If this is what your kind call bond, if this is what your kind call marriage," she paused, searching for the word, "then I accept. For him, for my child."